introduce our. I am so grateful to introduce my friend, another associate minister here at COE, Reverend David Shaw. He has been communicating with the divine since he was a child. He is an editor for all things COE, thank goodness. He is the president of the board of directors and in our choir, which is led by Reverend Kathleen Hellenberg. He devotes a lot of time to helping our church grow and continue. I am so appreciative of him for helping me out today. So please help me welcome Reverend David to the podium.
Thank you, Reverend Lisa.
You're welcome.
You catch her in a down moment, she's really grateful.
I know.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Spirit asked me to talk about my path to spiritual healing and how spiritual healing can help all of us to build up ourselves and others physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They gave me this topic Friday night after I offered to cover for Reverend Lisa in whatever she needed, and I felt okay taking on writing a sermon in less than 36 hours because they said they'd help, which they frequently do. When they don't, let me tell you, it's like pulling teeth. But this one, including the music, only took an hour and a half for the first draft, and I spent another half an hour tweaking it this morning. So 2 hours for a sermon and songs, that's like Reverend Cosmo's lifting her thumb up. That's easy peasy. It's not 8 hours of excruciating. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? All that stuff. Anyway, on to the sermon. My guardian angel first saved my life when I was 2.5 years old. After that, she started talking with me regularly. My family called her my imaginary friend, but she was, is, and will always be real to me. By the time I was 5 years old, I had gotten enough negative feedback about my imaginary friend that I shut off my ability to hear her. That went on till I was 11 and started reading fantasy and science fiction books. Some of those stories were so amazing, I wanted to live those kinds of lives. Then at 13, I started smoking marijuana because I had heard that it opened your mind to new ways of seeing things. And all of a sudden, I could hear my guardian angel again, as well as several other new voices. One of them said that I was going to be a spiritual healer. I didn't really know what that was at 13 years old, but it didn't sound good to me. Sort of like having voices in your head not good. So then I started drinking alcohol and became an alcoholic by the time I was 15. Now that shut the voices down. Now in addiction therapy, they talk about positive and negative addictions. Being a runner can be a positive addiction. People feel like they have to run because it helps them maintain a steady weight and metabolism, and it can help moderate their emotions. That's all positive, but it can also cause your body to break down from constantly pounding the pavement and from poor nutrition or lack of electrolytes. Now it's become a negative addiction because they still feel like they can't stop. And there's actually therapy for that. Drinking alcohol was only positive for me for about a year. Then it became very negative. So much so that I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting when I was 20. But I couldn't relate to those people. It was a bunch of old men in their 30s and 40s, guzzling coffee, devouring donuts, and chain smoking. The smoke went from the ceiling to 2 foot above the floor. I felt like I was 5 again in my parents' basement at Christmas. You know, you couldn't breathe. We'd escape to the first floor, and then they'd say, "You kids can't be up there by yourselves. You're going to cause trouble." And we'd like, "Please, we like to breathe oxygen." "No, back into the dungeon." which they were all down there chain smoking 2 or 3 packs a day. So it was pretty bad. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous was like. So after that meeting, I ran as fast as I could away from AA and went on with my negative addiction. And then, what would this be? 2 years later, Todd Rundgren released the album Healing on January 28th, 1981. It starts with that song that you just heard, Healer, and continued with the journey of a modern day healer. Side 2 of the album is actually a guided meditation to help you become a spiritual healer. I didn't know that this was groundbreaking subject matter at that time, especially in popular music. I didn't even know anything about the early New Age movement back in 81. I started listening to that meditation for a couple hours per day, and I made a cassette tape that played it in a 90-minute loop. I would sleep to that tape loop every night. And after 2 weeks of this, the urge to drink was lifted. It was a miracle. Sadly, I didn't change anything else in my life, so a year later, I was back to drinking and drugging. Then, at the age of 25, when I was facing recovery, insanity, or death, I admitted myself to Brighton Hospital, an addiction recovery facility, and got myself on the path to sobriety. My sobriety anniversary is in 2 weeks. So I'm happy. Thank you. I'm happy that Reverend Lisa asked me to speak, and Spirit gave me the topic of spiritual healing and told me to share that with you all. It's going to be 39 years and going strong. So next year, we're having a party. I'm told that 40 years is a big deal. When I got sober, I felt that I had to honor my gifts, or at least investigate these things. So I researched what it meant to be a spiritual healer. I started to read the Phenomenus magazine. Okay, who remembers Phenomenus? Raise your hand. Yeah, all the middle-aged and old people in the room. It's missed. It was a great resource. In there was an ad for classes on becoming a spiritual healer. So I signed up, and it was a 3-year program, which, like many of Reverend Ken Nowoczewski's courses, ended up taking 5 years. Later, I met Patty, who had also finished that program a few years before me, and we got married. Then she was asked to speak at this little church in Ferndale. We came to the Center of Enlightenment, not knowing what to expect, and I was home. One reason for that was when I previously took the healer program, Spirit had said, my next mission, because, the first mission was to be a spiritual healer. I was training for that. Oh, got to give him his next mission before he's even done with the first one. And that mission was to become a minister. And so they ordained people here. So I got in the ordination program, and that's why I'm here today. But also, that's a story for another day. So thanks to both of those programs, I'm doubly certified as a spiritual healer. Reverend Ken, one of this church's founders who passed away last year, loved to talk about the 3-legged stool of spiritualism: science, philosophy, and religion. I have news for you about the science. From the Indian Journal of Psychiatry, dated October-December 2009, religious traditions across the world display beliefs in healing through prayer. The healing powers of prayer have been examined in triple-blind, randomized, controlled trials. We illustrate randomized controlled trials on prayer and healing with one study in each of different categories of outcome. We provide a critical analysis of the scientific and philosophical dimensions of such research. Prayer has been reported to improve outcomes in human as well as non-human species, to have no effect on outcomes, to even worsen outcomes, and to have retrospective healing effects. For a multitude of reasons, research on the healing effects of prayer is riddled with assumptions, challenges, and contradictions that make the subject a scientific and religious minefield. We believe that the research has led nowhere, and that future research, if any, will forever be constrained by the scientific limitations that we outline. I say to the Indian Journal of Medicine, boo! Anyway, yeah, hui is another good one. For an alternative viewpoint, I present research on acupuncture, a traditional Chinese technique that has been used for millennia to treat chronic pain and other health problems associated with inflammation, yet the scientific basics of the technique was poorly understood or doubted entirely, just like spiritual healing. Then, in a 2014 study, researchers reported that electroacupuncture, a modern version of traditional acupuncture that uses electrical stimulation, could reduce cytokine storm in mice, whatever that means, by activating the vagal adrenal axis, a pathway wherein the vagus nerve signals the adrenal glands to release dopamine, which is a painkiller, a natural painkiller in your body. In 2020, another study discovered that this electroacupuncture effect was region-specific. It was effective when given in the hind limb regions of mice, but did not have an effect when administered to their abdomen. The team hypothesized that there may be sensory neurons unique to the hind limb region responsible for this difference in response. And in 2021, a team of researchers led by neuroscientists at Harvard Medical School elucidated the underlying neuroanatomy of acupuncture that activates a specific signaling pathway. If you want to see it, go online, Google acupuncture, Harvard Medical School. It's very technical and detailed, but that hypothesis that they wrote in 2020, the team in 2021 proved it. So in 2021, researchers concluded there are specific physical mechanisms involved in using acupuncture. This Chinese folk medicine that has been around since at least 10 BC was poo-pooed by the Western medical establishment as fake and a placebo effect. And I did get permission to use poo-pooed.
Okay.
And yet, acupuncture works on animals. So they aren't being talked into believing it's real. So you can't say there's a placebo effect because the animals don't know what the heck you're saying. They just know it worked. And now multiple research teams, including Harvard Medical School, have proven the physics of acupuncture. Some of these researchers have since moved on to studying the process where Reiki causes healing in people. And after that, I hope they move on to spiritual healing. Now, there are cases where they've concluded prayer does help. But like the Indian review of studies said, there's conflicting. Yes, no, maybe, we don't know. There's studies to prove all those things. But then they used to say smoking was good for you. And coffee, they switch every 10 years. Good for you, bad for you, good for you. You know, so science is very malleable. Another way that science has proven the reality of spiritualism is the many case studies where mediums have given messages from spirit to people they don't even know. And the people confirm those facts about what was said. That includes messages given in this very church. And I am very grateful that I have been giving messages from spirit that were confirmed in this way. But again, that whole subject is a topic for another time. Now I have homework for you all. And you don't have to go home to do it. Today is our fellowship potluck. And I would encourage you all to share how you heard about the Center of Enlightenment, why you came the first time, and why you keep coming back. If you're a spiritual healer, you could even share that journey in your life. And if you're more daring, I strongly encourage you to send Reverend Lisa an email sharing these same things so she can use it as a congregant profile in the Vestibule newsletter and on our website. And if just 6 people did that, she'd be covered through January. She hasn't done any in a while because she hasn't had any new victims. Contributors. In conclusion, I want to thank our spiritual healers for today, Jen and Jan. They believed they could do spiritual healing. Religion. They took our spiritual healing course and learned they could do it. Philosophy. And they did it today. Scientific proof. Our 3-legged stool in action. Thank you for your time and thank you for your attention.